just finished watching 2017's MUDBOUND, directed by Dee Rees, written by Virgil. Dee Rees, based on a book by Hillary Jordan. The story follows two families in Mississippi, one white, one black, and the struggles they all encounter in their everyday lives, and members of each of these families coming back from World War II and all the atrocities and the loss that they endured during that time. This is currently streaming on Netflix, and we're rounding out our Women Filmmaker Fridays with this just absolutely stunning movie by Dee Rees, which took my breath away. What do you say?
I thought it was really good too. You didn't really touch on it. It takes place in Mississippi during the mid-40s, so lots of racism. I mean, just the oppression of did they ever say the people's last names?
I don't remember. I just remember, Jackson. I just looked
the,
on IMDb.
the Jackson family, who...
And the other ones are the McAllans.
Yeah, they sort of like, they rent land from, I guess, like the main farm and work the land for the main farm, and that main farm is bought by...
Jason Clarke's character.
Jason Clarke's character, unbeknownst to his wife. He just decided...
Who he never
consulted. That's like another thing is like, I guess, indicative of the 40s. Women were pretty much property as well. Their dreams and hopes and desires were never consulted. This was a good... There is not a bit of joy in this movie, I don't think.
No.
Maybe when the family sees their son come back from the war, that was probably the happiest moment in the entire film.
Yeah.
The rest of it is just sad.
Yeah, although that ending is somewhat uplifting, but to get there was...
you gotta go through a lot of stuff to get there.
Just phenomenal storytelling, amazing acting. This unfortunately was only nominated for 3 Academy Awards, and it was for Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography, and Best Supporting Actress. Adapted Screenplay, I think, went to Moonlight, so that was a tough picture to beat, but this should have gotten cinematography at least. I feel like the cinematography on this was gorgeous.
It was beautiful. It showed the filth that these people were living in. It just looked so dirty. Everything looked so dirty.
Yeah.
Filmed beautifully.
But really,
it
felt like you were in 1940s.
It felt like these people were poor farmers who were just...
And they didn't need to be, did they?
And they didn't need to be. That was
the other thing that I found appalling about this story.
Yeah, it was... Why the hell would you choose this? It's just terrible. But he did choose it, and he was kind of oblivious, this guy.
Henry? Yeah. I mean...
It was like...
I like Jason Clarke a lot as an actor. I think he's got an interesting...
The performance was great, but I think the thing was, in the beginning of the film, his brother basically says something like, he wants it to be so it's going to be so. And that was pretty much what this guy was. It was just like, well, we got to dig this hole. It's got to be done.
Yeah. It's got to be today.
It's got to be today.
Yeah.
You got to go through the back door.
Yeah.
You can't go out the front door.
Yeah.
He was just like...
The only time he acquiesced was when Laura, played magnificently by Carey Mulligan, she put her foot down and she's like, either
we keep the piano
or the deal's off. Basically.
Yeah, I mean that
was the only time.
Your father sleeps out in the shanty or whatever.
Yeah.
They had like a little outhouse.
Yeah.
God. Oh, and the father. The father was a piece of garbage.
Crap.
Oh my
God. Yes.
He was so loathsome.
Hats off to Jonathan Banks, who did such a phenomenal job.
From the moment you see him, you hate him, and like. There isn't a single nice thing that he says from the get-go. He's just like, that guy ain't sitting next to me.
Yeah, just awful piece of shit.
Just awful. Really, just really free with that N-word, boy.
Yeah.
He was, and like, I don't know why I was kind of shocked when I saw the Klan outfits get busted out. I was like, you know, like initially I was like, oh wow, they really are like super racist, and I'm like, why does it surprise you? You heard the way this guy talked the entire movie.
Yeah.
They're in Mississippi in the 40s. Of course they were Klan people.
It's still jarring though to
It
see
is.
it.
Yeah.
It was awful. That last half of the movie was just oh my god, painful.
You kind of cracked me up a little because there was that really intense scene, and you're just like, he's like, turn around and shoot the rope. And I'm like, this ain't that kind of movie. There isn't any daring do here, you know?
I know. I'm just
nobody's pulling out sharpshooting suddenly.
My heart was in my throat. I didn't know what the hell to expect. But just top to bottom, gorgeous,
to bottom, really
beautiful.
Really beautiful. I really enjoyed the friendship between
Jamie and
Ronzel. That was like one of the points of the movie was sort of like how this brotherhood forms between them having shared the experience of going to war and also having shared the experience of experiencing not just loss but like brutal violent loss, like sudden death of those that you care about,
right.
And just PTSD and everything,
which is something I'm assuming people didn't really talk about.
No,
there was that scene with I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The scene with Henry the brother where he's like basically like, oh, just man up. Like he had no comprehension of what Jamie had gone through.
Yeah.
And Jamie just as soon as he stepped foot, or even probably during the war, just downward spiral in just drinking and smoking and just
trying to numb the pain.
Just trying to numb the pain, exactly. And just
also
indulging in behavior that probably could have killed him. Like, I turned to you at one point, I'm like, how is he not dead driving? Like, every time he's behind the wheel, he is just drunk as a skunk.
Well, I mean, there's also, you gotta consider, like, he was deep in, like, survivor's guilt. Like,
for sure.
He definitely did not feel like he deserved to be the one that lived, whereas these other guys who had wives and children, they're never coming home.
Yeah.
And that struck him deeply. That really struck him deeply. And the fact that he said, I want to do something good, that he prayed when everything was going down. And that, like, changed it, because chances are he probably wasn't far off from where Henry and the dad were. Pa.
Yeah.
Henry was Jason Clarke, right?
Yeah. And Jamie was the other.
Like, Pa was the worst. Henry was like a step down. Mm-hmm. You could see like maybe the level of racial bigotry.
But Pappy
maybe got like diluted a bit a generation down. But Pappy was like full on scumbag.
Scumbag racist. Yeah.
Yeah. He was just an animal.
And I think also he shares a story with Ronzel about how he thought he too was going to die that day, but then the Red Tails came and one of the other fighter pilots was African American too, and just like saluted him and back too. So I think that also impacted him that we're all the same basically.
Yeah, you're a man.
You're a soldier.
You're a soldier. You have the same hopes and dreams and fears and capability of love that everyone else has.
And entitlement to happiness.
And it's an absolute crime that some people feel it's just the order of things or the way that it should be, which was kind of what like Henry was.
Yeah.
I don't think Henry was actively going out and like attacking black people, but he was totally cool with it happening. Right. Because that's just the way it should be.
Right.
The way it was.
I mean, the first time that he sees Ronzel in the I guess the store, the general store, I mean, he could have said something and been like, "Let's move." Like, he's just coming back from the war. He's a soldier. Let's at least give him
Give him some respect. No.
Right. His whole thing
And
was
then
go to the back.
Yeah. And then
I don't want any trouble. Just go to the back.
And then he demanded an apology.
And one for his father.
And one for his
piece of shit
douchebag father. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, top to bottom, everyone in this cast: Carey Mulligan, Jason Clarke, Mary J. Blige. Wow.
That's who that was.
Yes.
I was like, I recognize the mother.
You didn't know that was her?
I couldn't put my finger on it. I was
You're so crazy. What's wrong with you? Rob Morgan, Jason Mitchell as Ronzel, Garrett Hedlund as Jamie, Jonathan Banks as Pappy. Wow. He really, I mean, I loved him in Breaking Bad, even though he was a sketch guy on that thing too. But
everybody loved Mike on Breaking Bad.
Everybody likes Mike on Breaking Bad. But here, as Pappy McAllen, Jonathan Banks can go F himself.
Yeah. Just loathsome animal.
Loathsome animal. Anything else you want to add?
I mean,
there's really no critique here. This is a sensational
I
movie.
have a minor critique.
Oh my goodness.
I thought you seemed to like it, but I felt the narration was a bit too much, and to me, I felt that it made the things lose focus a bit.
I disagree. I thought it was interesting that they used that as a way of, and it wasn't exposition. It wasn't like he was telling me what was going on. It just added to the story, the narration, and it's at some point it stops. It's just in the beginning where you're kind of.
It was throughout the entire movie, and the thing
more so in the beginning, and then it sort of dies down so that you can get to this place where the other piece of the story between Jamie and Ronzel, like developing this friendship and yada yada yada. At the end, yeah, there's some of that, but I think for the kind of like, I don't know if it's like the second act. I never understand like how to separate movies like this, but there's a chunk in the middle where it's not really used.
Yeah, but there's still, it's
heavy in the beginning.
It's heavy, and the fact that it's not just a single narrator. It's
different ones.
Henry has some narration.
Laura
has some narration. Ronzel has some narration.
Florence the mother.
Mother has a Cap the dad has a narration. I think the only person that didn't have narration was Pappy.
Pappy, yeah. Which nobody needed to go in there.
And the brothers and sisters of Ronzel. To me, that was just, I didn't know who was telling me the story. It felt like this was supposed to be sort of like a memoir almost. And then it's just like, but whose memoir?
It is based on a book. I've not had the privilege of reading the book. I don't know how the story's structured, but I personally thought it worked. And everyone's voice is distinctive enough that you understand who's who and who's speaking. I think Garrett Hedlund had a very distinct kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Accent. Very different than Jason Clarke's. There's a different tone between Carey Mulligan and Mary J. Blige's voice. Rob Morgan doesn't sound like anyone else either. So I think, to me it worked. I thought it was fantastic. I found it as an interesting kind of mechanism to tell the story. I didn't have a problem with it. Anything else?
No. Like I said, it's good. A good movie, a good story, a heartbreaking story.
Yes.
But there's a bit of hope at the end. Yeah, I recommend.
I too highly recommend this movie. I'm gonna give this movie. I feel like, is it a perfect movie?
No.
It's up there.
I'll give this.
I'm trying to think what did this movie have that it didn't. I'm going to give it a 9.75. I think it's close to perfect.
I'll give it an 8.5.
No, it's better than an 8.5. You're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. Just based on the performances alone, the script is outstanding. You cannot tell me that you watched that movie and didn't think that you were in 1940s Mississippi.
No, I did, but I felt that the narration was a little too much.
I disagree.
It was unfocused as far as who's telling the story. I
think we can spoil this. This is from 2017. It's not.
Kind of out of nowhere.
It's not a new movie.
Something happened. I mean, it's I guess it's not 100% out of nowhere, but it was just, I don't know.
They were kind of giving each other eyes the first time they met.
It just feels, it was just one of those things where it was just like, things like that happen only that fast in stories. And
I don't think so.
This story to me felt like this felt like a real story.
Mm-hmm.
This felt like a real story. And then when you just chuck in like some sort of like real Hollywood trope like that, it's like, oh, shoot the rope. Like, that wasn't going to happen. It's just not that type of movie. And to me, that felt like it didn't belong in there.
I disagree. And the reason why I disagree is because you really have to understand where this woman is coming from.
I understand.
Can I finish my point, though? She's coming from a life of privilege. She said she was 31 and she was still a virgin when she met Henry, right?
Yeah.
So she's coming from a well-to-do family, a life of privilege. She's never had to rough it in any way, shape, or form. And like you said, Henry's viewpoint on her is that she's just a commodity. She's just property to him. Does he really love her? Does he show her like real equality and love and compassion and empathy? No. Everything is about him. Like you said, even the brother's like, what Henry wants, Henry ultimately makes happen because he's so freaking stubborn and this is the way it's gotta be. But I think that in her just aloneness, in her drowning in this realization that no matter what she wants, it's never going to be about what she wants. It's always going to be Henry calling the shots, no matter what. So she went from having a life with indoor plumbing to living in a shack where she had to take a bath like once a week and have her lecherous piece of shit father-in-law peep her and stare at her every once in a while. And I think by Jamie making her that shower that gave her dignity and privacy, that was something that in her awoke that sense of I'm worthy. And you see that scene in the beginning too, where they're at a party and Jamie tells Henry, "Oh, do you mind if I take your girl for a spin around the dance floor?" And she said something like, this is where the narration really comes into play, where she says something like, or maybe it wasn't her, somebody makes a comment of like, "Oh, when you're with Jamie, you feel like you're the only one in the room," because that's the type of guy he is. Like he just gives.
Henry told her that. He says Henry makes a girl sparkle.
Right. No, but she also made a comment while they were dancing, and it was internal dialogue. So I think these little things helped kind of ferment a relationship. And also, where did Pappy get it from? He had to have seen something.
No, I'm not saying that all of what you said wasn't true. Mm-hmm. But in that moment, it was just.
But we're not privy to all the build-up.
It was just, we were privy to enough. But even still, in that moment, that was just Hollywood.
Yeah, I disagree.
To me, that was just a Hollywood moment. Did not ring true as far as the time period, the tone, everything else. It was just like, this is sort of like the fantasy, and now we're going to give it to you. And it stuck out a bit to me. So that's why this is a great movie, but that in conjunction with the too many narrators.
I disagree, but that's just me. It worked. The storytelling device worked for me. I guess it didn't work for you.
Nah.
That's fine.
But come on, 8.5 is a good number. So stop acting like it's a bad one. It's a good number.
It deserves more than that, though.
All right, you practically gave it a 10. I don't know, why didn't you just give it a 10?
I don't know. Maybe I should.
Yeah. Maybe there's a little piece of you that believes what I'm saying.
Not for the reasons you cited, though.
Well, something knocked off of.
I'm just thinking, is it in the year that it was nominated for an Oscar? Is it a better set piece than Moonlighting? Moonlighting is also.
I never saw Moonlight. I don't know.
Moonlighting. That's Bruce
Willis
and
Sybil
Shepard. Yeah, no. I think think it was really excellent. And all the performances were like, wow.
Everybody's performance was really
Everyone.
good. Like I really felt for Hap. I thought I gotta be honest. I guess that could sort of be another bit of a knock against it is, and you know what? That's probably why the narration threw me off, because I thought, like initially, I kind of thought it was going to be a story about Hap and the Carey Mulligan.
Laura? You
I
thought it was
thought-
going to be about Hap and Laura?
I thought that the story would be told from their perspective solely, and then suddenly it's just like, oh, it's Lawrence's.
But this isn't really like a perspective thing. It's more like an ensemble because everyone.
I know, but it just becomes muddy.
I disagree.
Mudbound. I feel that hindered it rather than helped it.
I disagree.
I think they could have probably gotten rid of a bunch of the narrators and just told the story.
It definitely would have been interesting if it had been told from like one member of one family and one member of the other. But I still think this works. It was interesting to see it from everyone's vantage point, from Hap, who goes from being sort of like the don't make waves kind of farmhand to at the end still, I guess, giving these people their respect, but also carving out a path for himself and truly getting that freedom by having his own parcel and land.
Yeah, that was his dream.
So that was his dream, and it happened.
It happened. So there, like I said, there is a happy ending. But with all of that, you get like these perspectives of these characters. But to me, the big story was the relationship between Ronzel and Jamie.
Yeah. No, I think, well, that's a big focus of the film.
I think that was that was a big focus of the film, but it wasn't the sole focus.
No.
And I didn't see how the other aspects relayed into it, especially considering nobody really addressed the fact that these two guys who shouldn't have been friends in this backwards society they had going on over there were friends.
Well, I think that they...
oh God, I keep forgetting Carey Mulligan's character.
Laura
never mentioned it, never addressed it. Henry never addressed it.
Well, it seemed like they were friends on the sly. Like, you saw Ronzel hide.
Exactly, but the father knew.
Because he saw him probably.
Yeah, he
and
did.
He probably had an idea.
He saw him getting picked up.
Mm-hmm.
And never discussed anything. Don't do that. Don't hang out with that guy. It's going to end up bad.
Well, maybe he didn't think that it was that big a deal.
Are you kidding me?
Ronzel's dad?
Hap would absolutely have been like, this is going to end up bad.
But he didn't.
He did it, right. And that's
the first time
to me.
That Jamie goes to the house. And Hap's like, oh, what is it, sir? Can I help you with something? And because he's like already on kind of like the defensive, like, what did my son do to warrant one of the McAllans to come to the house? And I don't think that he realized that, because I think that at that point, Jamie was already so broken, and I think just wanted the comfort of someone who he felt would understand his brokenness. And of everyone else, he couldn't lay that burden on Laura because A, she was Henry's wife, and there's obviously that this shouldn't happen aspect, right? He couldn't talk to his father because his father was a piece of shit. He couldn't talk to his brother because his brother just didn't understand.
Yeah.
So he purposely reaches out to Ronzel, and I think especially because Ronzel in that time reached out to him to help him. You notice he never took Ronzel's hand. He just picked himself up.
Yeah.
But in that moment, he surveyed, I guess, the landscape and realized, I'm going to give this guy a ride home so he doesn't have to deal with all these people.
Yeah.
And from there, the relationship.
Jamie knew if I do take his hand and I do let him ride in the car with me, it's going to be bad because all these people are standing here. It wasn't until he got out of town that he said, get in the car.
True.
So Jamie was aware of the situation
Well, I think they both were. Because
And I think, and that's
Ronzel doesn't immediately go into shotgun. He goes to the back.
he goes in the back.
Right, because that's what is expected of
Ronzel did offer his hand.
He did.
He did.
He did.
But Jamie was like, he
So
got up by
societal
himself.
norms don't.
Societal norms.
Don't
And all of those guys, they were standing there looking intently at what was going to happen right there.
Sure.
So clearly, the society sees this relationship as something bad.
Right.
Which means Hap knows that this relationship is something bad, and
but maybe it
will lead to trouble.
But maybe he wasn't.
It never really comes up.
But maybe he wasn't aware of it, because remember that time where he gets up late at 9 o'clock in the morning and he's like, "Where have you been? And what are you doing?" And
he saw him get in the car with him.
True.
So he knew.
But he didn't think enough to bring it up or make mention of it.
In this society, this is something that would have been brought up.
I don't know.
It's for these. Eight and a half is an excellent, good number. It means I like this movie a lot, but I cannot ignore these little things. And making matters even more like glaring is the fact that we do get the narration from Hap and the mother and all these other side characters. Or I mean, I don't even know if I can really consider them side characters. Are they side characters?
To me, it's a true ensemble piece.
It is.
Everyone has equal footing.
It is, but the story is mainly about that
friendship.
Sure. I mean that it even like shifts away from. God damn, I forgot her goddamn
Laura.
name. It shifts away from Laura.
Right, because in the beginning it seems like it's going to be about her.
It's going to be about her dealing with this. Like seriously, in the beginning, I thought this is going to be mainly about her. Mm-hmm. Because she's talking about her life and how she met Henry and whatever, and she seems to be the focal point of the story. And then when they head out to the farm, then you get the narration from Hap, and I'm like, okay, so I guess it's going to be some sort of relationship will form between these two. But no, there was no relationship between us. They barely interacted at all.
I think, obviously, Laura had an affinity for Florence for coming to her aid when the girls were sick.
Yeah. And
helping her when she miscarried. And just that, I guess, understanding or community of one mother to another. I think they understood each other in that sense. And I think she genuinely liked Florence. And I think Florence genuinely liked Laura too, mm-hmm. but probably with reservation because of the reasons that you stated. But I think because someone like Laura isn't cognizant of the bigger ramifications of that kind of relationship, her privilege doesn't allow her to see that this can be construed in a very strange way. Like if she had ever, I don't know, been doing something and then Ronzel helped her, like that could have been construed as something inappropriate, even though it wasn't. Mm-hmm. And same thing, I think she just didn't understand, because you have to figure she led a very sheltered life mm-hmm. prior to all of this. She's just going with the flow because that's what's expected of her. That's how she's been taught. This is your role. You're now a wife and a mother. She lived for Henry, and then when the first daughter came along, that was her focal point, right? So she's not even her own person. She's sort of like this servant in a way too.
She even says it. She's like, I loved my life. I loved yielding to Henry.
Right.
Like she used the word yielding.
Yielding, right. So I think she wouldn't understand it. And I think she genuinely liked Florence and felt bad, because especially at the end, when Henry's trying to get Hap to help him with the coffin, and Jamie and Laura are both like almost mortified that he even reached out to them at this point. Mm-hmm. So, but I think at the same time, I think Florence liked Laura, but again with trepidation, because she understood her, I guess, her role in, friendship. That was there.
They knew like the hierarchy and how that's how it was, and there was nothing going to change that.
Sure.
And they knew the dangers of becoming too familiar, I guess.
Absolutely.
Which
it's all over the place
back
there.
to my point about why wasn't there much concern over Ronzel's friendship with Jamie? Basically, intermingling was not good things
thing.
did not happen because of that.
True.
And like
but I don't think-
everybody should have been suspicious of that, and even they were, because even the first time Henry knocks on the door, Hap's like, the whole family is like, what's that?
Mm.
He grabs it like a bat or like a huge piece of wood to basically bash in the possible head of somebody who intends to do his family harm.
Mm.
And you know who he thought was behind the door, and he was half right. It wasn't a violent white guy, but it was a white guy. And the white guy was just like, hey, help me unload my crap.
Yeah.
Gotta do it tonight.
Yeah.
Before the rain starts.
Oh, gosh.
It was like, what?
Yeah.
I don't even know you, man.
Yeah.
You just ordering me? I'm your tenant.
Yeah.
What if your
Yeah,
landlord, when you rented an apartment, just came up to your door and was just like, hey, we gotta move this oil burner out of my basement.
Yeah, but even with being a tenant, he was still a black man. So he knew that ultimately
Right.
he's put into a place of subjugation.
Right, you're completely feeding into my point.
No, but I think that, listen, what was Hap's main focus?
Hap's main focus was getting enough money to get the hell out of there.
Right, so he worked hard on the farm and tending to everything and all this other stuff. Was he a loving father and a loving husband? Yes.
Yeah.
But I think there's certain things that Hap just wasn't aware of. And I think that this was one of them.
I don't see how he couldn't have been aware of it when he saw him basically
I don't
getting picked up by Jamie every day.
Well, do we know that it was every day?
It was over the course of many days.
And we don't know that Hap was sitting there at that time all the time. I mean, there might have been times where
If
he didn't
it was
see it.
either Hap or his mom or somebody.
Right. True, but I think also they
they
seemed
never
like a more together family, and they seemed to honor and respect each other. And I think that they gave Ronzel a lot of leeway because he was coming back from the war. They understood that he was broken.
I just don't think that it would not have been a subject that would have been broached. You know, it's just something that would have come up, especially if we're getting their mind's eye view with the narration.
But is it because at the same time there's that scene, it's very small, but it wasn't lost on me when Florence says to Hap, let's just let him be. Let's just let him choose his own path. And he was like, no, but we're working towards this family farm and he's going to be happy when he has his own land. But maybe that wasn't what he wanted.
No, yeah, that did happen, but it's not like he lived in New York City where you could basically hop on the train and become a totally different person.
Mm-hmm.
They lived in a tiny place in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't that many people around.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody knew who everybody was. So there is no real, go do your own thing. That really doesn't exist. Your own thing is everybody's business.
But your own thing, obviously she knew, as a mother, she knew that his place wasn't there anymore. She understood that.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying
and that scene where the son says to the father, like, I'm just not used to not fighting back now. That war changed him. The experience of the war changed him in more ways than one.
I'm just saying that if you have one of the characters as a narrating character, and this is not even one, it's two characters, and there's this major plot point, seriously, that was a major plot point, and they love this character who's involved in this major plot point, and then they just never address it. Even though we have okay, maybe they're not going to verbally address it, but we've already opened the gateway with the narration, so think about it. Oh, I hope Ronzel is being careful in his head. Or just talk about it with his wife. It never came up. And to me, that felt like a missing piece.
I don't necessarily agree, but that's just me. That's just me.
That's fine. I'm just stating my opinion there, and if you didn't see it that way, that's cool.
All right.
But 8.5.
All right. It should be higher, but whatever. We won't dwell on it, even though you're incorrect as usual.
No, I think I have extremely valid points, and it makes a lot of sense. And 8.5 is a really good score for a film that was excellent but had some flaws to it, which I have
Disagree.
which I have stated quite plainly, and
You're wrong. But that's it from us, and we will come back with another review soon. Good night,
Good night.
everybody.